So it's good to see everyone here. We will go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask my friend, Senator Anna Vitarte, to open us in a word of prayer. What number are you on there, Senator? 10?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bow our heads. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us here today as we deliberate the citizens of Georgia's business. Pray for everyone in this room, your families, and everyone have safe travels back home to wherever you're headed. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. We have a pretty short agenda here today. We're going to go through and vote on our rules, and we are going to hear from our esteemed GDOT Commissioner just on a general transportation update for the state. But before we do that, I would love to take an opportunity to have everyone on the committee introduce themselves and what I thought that I would do, since we all come from somewhat different areas of the state, although I'm seeing a lot of North Atlanta here in the room right now, which is fun. But we'd love to have each of you highlight something about your district as it relates to transportation that we may not know about if you would not share it. So, Senator Burns, we will start with you, and you are number 12.
Number 12, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's great to be on the Transportation Committee. I appreciate the opportunity. I have the 23rd Senate District, which is Augusta, the southern part of Augusta, Columbia County.
Great, thank you. Chairman Beach.
Brandon Beach. I represent Senate District 21, which is Alpharetta, Milton, and North Fulton, and Cherokee County. A couple projects. One, a major project, Georgia 400, some new lanes that will be coming northbound and southbound with bus rapid transit in the middle. That's going to be a huge project for the state. Georgia 400 is an economic engine for our state. The other project I would tell you that, and this is a great example of why we passed House Bill 170. The portion of Highway 20 in Cherokee County from 575 to Scott Road is under construction now. I believe it'll be open, weather permitting, sometime in May or June of this year. That project was not even scheduled till 2026, I'm pretty sure, with federal funds. And if we would not have had House Bill 170 passed, we would not even, it wouldn't even be under construction until 2026, and it's going to be completed in May, that portion, and then we're going to continue to go on all the way into Forsyth County. But that's a great project and a great example of letting us do our own capital projects with state funding instead of the federal funding. And I know I want to just thank the commissioner for doing that, because that moved that project up years in advance, and that whole area in Cherokee's growing, so we needed the infrastructure investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Beach. Before we move on to Chairman Anna Vitarte, I just want to say to you, and I would say the same thing to Senators Gooch and Ginn if they were here, but you've done a fantastic job being an advocate for transportation in the state. The way that three of you guys have led this committee has put us on really solid footing, and definitely look forward to having your expertise
Thank you.
on this committee. Senator Anna Vitarte.
Mr. Chairman, I think that means there's pretty high expectations for you. My name is Jason Anna Vitarte. I represent Paulding and Polk County. Probably the most interesting thing about my district is there is no interstate that runs through either of my counties. My old district, I had Interstate 20. Probably the biggest opportunity, and I know the commissioners heard this from me, is around freight and logistics, basically west of Cobb County to the Alabama state line. There's a lot of traffic moving west. There's a lot of traffic not wanting to go up 75 to go around Chattanooga to get to Nashville, St. Louis, Birmingham, Dallas, Texas, wherever you want to call it. So I think West Georgia, the best part of Georgia, is where all the opportunity is in terms of freight and logistics in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Chairman Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clint Dixon, I represent the 45th District, which includes portions of Gwinnett and Barrow County. As far as DOT projects, there are too many to count, but one that's near and dear to me is the new interchange at 85 in Gravel Springs. It really alleviated a lot of traffic at the Mall of Georgia and the Hamilton Mill exit. It's been a massive benefit to North Gwinnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Greg Dolezal. I represent Forsyth County, which is the fastest growing county in the state. Senator Beach and I chair a lot of Georgia 400. What I think makes Georgia 400 interesting as it relates to transportation is we are the really the IT hub and the technology hub of not only Georgia, but really the Southeast. Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. And I think that we're probably living in probably the most revolutionary time as it relates to transportation. Over the next 20 years, we will see a significant shift to autonomous vehicles. We'll see a significant shift to things like air taxis and things that, a generation ago were only imagined in cartoons like the Jetsons. And so I think that for us to live in that area, we're going to be on the forefront of that. And being the fastest growing county, we have more transportation projects happening, multiple interchanges going in on Georgia 400, multiple widening projects. Our county passed a transportation bond 8 years ago now, has had a great partnership with GDOT working on multiple infrastructure projects in Forsyth County. We'll go to Senator McLaurin next. Which mic are you on over there, Senator? 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Josh McLaurin. I represent newly constituted Senate District 14, which is all North Fulton County. Goes from Atlanta to Alpharetta, is what I say, and it's got the top-end project, 285, 400, as well as a significant chunk of 400, basically exits 2 up to, okay, pop quiz 10, I think. So it's a lot of commuters, a lot of people who go home at night along 400 and go to work in downtown Atlanta and midtown Atlanta. And I got to say, I mean, in terms of issues for my district, this is probably top of the list. When I go door to door and I'm trying to reach for the unlikeliest voters, I'm like, hey, we both hate sitting in traffic, right? So that's usually on my voters' minds. So I'm really happy to be here, honored to be able to serve on the committee. Thankful, too, for the commissioner's work over the last few years. When I was a baby House member, we were putting in those plans for flyover lanes and bus rapid transit, and I really appreciated GDOT's responsiveness to community concerns about the location of certain aspects of the project. They got pretty in the weeds and were very, very responsive to the community. So thank you for that. Glad to be here.
Thank you, Senator. And my delegation mate, Senator Sean Still.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sean Still, and I have the envious position of being wedged right smack in the middle between Senators Beach, Dixon, and Dolezal. And so I get everything between Fulton, Forsyth, and Gwinnett, the fastest growing county, as well as the 2 largest counties. So I believe Commissioner McMurray has sent me a list of over 4 dozen projects that are happening right now somewhere in or around my district. So I'll be going blind on reading sometime later this week, trying to catch up to speed on all that. So thanks for having me.
That's great. Thank you. And Senator, again, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and maybe tell us something about your district that we would not otherwise know as it relates to transportation.
Hey, well, I'll just tell you, so my name's Frank Ginn. I tell people all over the state, I'm the luckiest guy to serve in the Senate, but I represent everywhere in Georgia, but those people in the 47th district decide how long. And as that relates to transportation, if you don't know, one of the things that's really exciting is we have the #1 national football team 2 years in a row, and they all get on a bus and go to the football game. So I'm going with them. Go Dogs!
There you go. Anytime we can call the Dogs, it's a good thing. Well, Senator Beach and I have the honor of serving on the Committee on Assignments, and I can tell you that this was one of the most requested committees to be on, and it's likely due to what Senator McLaurin shared, which is the transportation touches every single one of our constituents in some capacity. I think the tendency is to think about that in terms of cars on pavement. While that is certainly a significant portion of that, this committee will deal with ports, railroads, airplanes, any way of moving people and cargo throughout the state. So look forward to working with each and every one of you. And really the tip of the spear for making that happen is our very own GDOT Commissioner, Russell McMurray. We'd love you to step forward and give us an update. And Josh, I'm not sure if you'll be part of this as well, but you're welcome to come up if you'd like. We do need to pass the rules. Thank you. To my seasoned chairman over there. We've got a motion and a second. I'll just highlight for discussion, the only change here is the number for a quorum has increased due to the increased size of this committee. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those like sign. The motion passes unanimously. We have rules. Mr. Commissioner, what I was about to tell you is that I've heard from multiple members of this committee and multiple members of the Senate, and really unanimously what people say about your department is under your leadership. They do a phenomenal job. And you're accessible, you're available, you're solution-oriented, and is grateful for the 4 years that I've been here to have worked with you and your team. I know that we all share that same sentiment. So we'd love for you to do a deep dive with us on everything happening in the world of transportation. Are you on number 1 or 2 there? I'll turn them both on.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is my favorite committee, beside appropriations, of which I believe you may chair that as well, on the ones that matter for transportation. So thank you for doing that introductory. I know you all, but hearing those unique things that's going on in your district are all tied together, Chairman, as you just threaded that together, whether it's about people or freight or, whether it's multimodal, being intermodal, air, waterways, rail, transit. It's all forms of transportation that make a difference. So today you said you had a short meeting. I've got a lot of slides this after lunch, but I'm going to go really fast. And what I want to do is recap a little bit about, again, just the transportation network, a little bit about where the money goes, a little bit about what things are costing, but really focus a little bit on freight and what freight and logistics mean to this state. And almost every one of you mentioned that in what's going on in your district. And so I want to take a little deeper dive into some good work that our planning division's done and set the table again as a little bit of the case study of how things are going in Georgia and how great they're going and what that may mean for our future. So you got a handout we'll flip through. That first slide is just, again, the reminder of the nation's 10th largest transportation network. That is a big deal. Yeah, it's the largest landmass east of Mississippi. Obviously, we have a lot of road miles, 125,700 is a lot. And you can see on that slide that, the state routes actually constitute a smaller share. But in fact, about 62% of the traffic's on the state routes or the interstate system. So even though we have a smaller share, we move a lot more volume on those routes. And the other wonderful thing, again, for being a freight hub and just a mobility hub is 15 of Georgia's interstates connect to basically 30% of the continental United States directly. So if you think about an I-20 or I-85 or I-95, we touch a lot of, a lot of states, 30% of continental United States. So that gives us great reach here in Georgia, especially from a freight and mobility point of view. And just as a reminder, and this number always is staggering, if you draw a box around Georgia and count up how far we all drive in Georgia in one day, over 330 million miles traveled in one day in this state. So that is a lot of traffic. That's why people say we're sitting in traffic, right? That's a big number. And so the other thing I draw your attention to is bridges. Again, Georgia has a lot of bridges compared to some of our neighboring states even, with the waterways and what we have here, rail overpasses and interstate interchanges and the like. Almost 15,000 bridges, and I note that 1,365 of them are not strong enough to carry the existing weights that we allow by law. And that's obviously a concern, and we've been driving that number down, but still lots of work to do there. Again, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, truly intermodal, 105 airports. We all know the world's busiest one right around the corner here. But those other 104 general aviation airports that may have commercial out of it as well, very critical, and I'll touch base on air cargo in a moment. But 92 transit operators as well. Not all solutions are cars. Transit is becoming more and more important. Even in our rural part of the state, it means access to jobs, certainly means access to health care and the like. Railroads, again, the largest trackage in the southeast with 4,600 miles. Obviously, our partners at Norfolk Southern and CSX are part of moving cargo that takes trucks off the road, and that's very important. Because we see growing capacity on our highways, and the more those containers and freight you can get on rail, the better it is for us. So we value all our Class 1s and the short line operators that we have across the state. And of course, our friends at the Georgia Ports Authority who do remarkable things and keep beating all kind of records on containers that move each year. Those 4 ports, and one of those is a little bit of one that's under development. Obviously, the Gainesville Inland Port is getting under development now. The Appalachian Port, and of course, you've got the seaports at Savannah and the one down at Brunswick, the roll-on, roll-off, which if you ever get to see that, it's the largest car lot you'll ever see. More new cars there than you can imagine, so it's quite the thing to behold. Just again, just to set the foundation to all of you about how big this transportation network is that we, as the Department of Transportation, is responsible for. So let's go to the next slide. Again, this is going back to how we finished FY '22, about where money went. Because being good stewards of taxpayer dollars is very critical to us. We take that very seriously. And this pie chart gives you a breakdown, but let me just sum up the blue and the greens, because that's the dollars that are being deployed out to do things on the roadways, whether it be a capital improvement, a widening a road, replacing a bridge, taking care of asphalt, maintenance work, repaving, reconstructing. If you look at those categories, that totals 66% of the budget. If you add in the local maintenance improvement grant money that goes out to your cities and counties, that boosted up to about 71, almost 72% of the money is actually going toward the doing. And of course, you have to develop projects and plans, so about 4% of the budget is under program delivery. That's the engineering, the upfront work to help drive those things forward so that you actually can bid a project at the end of the day. And so very important, as well as traffic management and operations, things such as signalization and upgrading traffic signals and deploying the technology. Mr. Chairman, I agree that technology in actually this decade will move transportation more than we've seen in the past several decades. So I concur with your notions there. So you can see where the budget goes, the biggest pieces. The one thing I do highlight as well is our administrative costs, or overall agency administration, is around 2%. So we try to be very lean on that front as well. But how do we compare? According to U.S. government spending, Georgia invests about 0.58% of the gross state product in transportation. So 0.58% of gross state product. The national average is about 0.61%. So we're below the national average, so we believe we provide a good value, being lean and efficient. Then again, our national average 0.61. I just add that Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Florida, our neighbors, are all above the national average as their investment on a gross state product. So again, we try to be very efficient, and no offense to my friends in the other states, but if you travel around, I think you can tell that we try to do a very good job. The next slide, over on slide 4, is just, again, I showed this at joint appropriates, but just go back to it to highlight some of the things. It takes a lot of consultant work. We're as lean as we've ever been, and we use consultants heavily to supplement and to do work, and we manage those consultants. In fact, in 2022, we did 1,120 consultant contracts. Those are professional services contracts, from everything from engineering to geotechnical to right-of-way services to buy property. It valued at $628 million of the professional services contracts. Part of those things we have to do to get projects ready is you have to go buy property when you do expansion projects. We bought 1,555 parcels, and I always remind people, our process is just like any arm's length business transaction of buying a piece of property. You got to appraise it, you got to negotiate it, and you got to sit down and close it. And so a lot of work in that. And last year, last budget year, 279 projects were awarded to construction, valued at $1.56 billion. And I might add that we actually rejected 23 bids totaling $352 million in 2022, which was about an 8% rejection rate. In the next slides, I'll talk about some of those price pressures we have and that we've seen where we just couldn't accept the bid due to the price volatility that the contractors were trying to bid. And again, I give our contractors total credit. It's not that they are coming up with bad numbers. It's hard for them to get quotes and prices for projects, especially back then. Things are beginning to stabilize a little bit, albeit high. For FY23, when we look at the projects we plan to bid, we believe we'll finish out over $2.26 billion of projects out the door to be bid. That totals 392 projects. So as Chairman Beach talked about State Route 20, some of those projects come online, and we continue to advance some of these major corridors. Now, I will caveat that, again, we've rejected 13 bids so far this fiscal year, totaling almost $200 million. So we'll see how that goes. Again, we look at those projects hard. We hate to reject bids, but we do have to, do the best we can with the funding we have. The next slide is just a little bit, again, about those pressures that we continue to see with inflation. The average low bid, and again, I'll remind you that we take the lowest responsive bid from pre-qualified contractors, and so the average low bid that we accepted has been about 122% above what we actually budgeted for due to the supply chain pressures and inflation. And if you look at that top bar, top little box, you can see resurfacing is about 123%, intersection projects 127%, all the way down to widening projects where you're doing a 2-lane to 4-lane, 149% of what we budgeted for prior to some of these inflationary pressures. So it's real. It's a challenge. Parts of the state have still had challenges with some of the commodities, getting concrete and cement and things like that, or aggregates, especially in the coastal region down around Savannah, where there's a huge supply and demand at that area. So those are real things. I would say this, though, with the state funding being good and the federal funding, which has been good as well, we've been able to maintain. With the federal level, through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we thought that we would have more money to go do further things, but that's just been eroded by basically inflation and supply chain cost. So what does that turn into on the next slide? Is here's some recent average cost. When I say total cost, is what's the all-in cost to design it, do the environmental, buy the property, and then bid it to get it built, including any utility relocations. Here's what things are going for. Resurfacing a 2-lane highway is about $382,000 a mile. An interstate, a 4-lane interstate, costs about $1.1 million a mile just to resurface it. And that's not rebuilding anything, it's just straight resurfacing. These numbers are pretty wild. If you look at widening a rural 2-lane to 4-lane road, I'll use like US 133 down below Albany in that area, goes for about $9.4 million a mile. You get up into, let's say, Alpharetta and State Route 9 corridor there in Forsyth and North Fulton, about $18.1 million a mile. Often, and you see it as Chairman Beach mentioned, State Route 20, you'll see right-of-way cost on par with construction cost, if not higher sometimes. The more urban you get, property costs can actually exceed construction cost. To widen a rural interstate, say I-85 in northeast Georgia, is going for about $15 million a mile, where you don't really have to buy property. It's just going from a 2-lane to 6-lane interstate. It's about $15 million. In bridges, just basically the average bridge replacement cost now, rule of thumb, is about $5 million for a simple bridge. If it's on a state route, it's about $7 million, and those are average prices. So you can certainly have highs and lows in that. And then new interchanges. New interchange on an interstate or a freeway in the rural part of the state is about $80 million, and if it's in an urban area, it's up to about $100 million. So that's where the dollars go. They go fairly quickly. So just again to set some markers out there as we talk about this next thing I really want to talk about. And on the next slide, I just want to commend this Senate Transportation Committee and the work of your former chairman, with Chairman Ginn and Chairman Beach, going back to our Freight and Logistics Study Committee, going back several years under HR 935, and then the aviation work that was done, Joint Study Committee on Airport Infrastructure Improvements, that was finished up, I guess, just a year ago. Looking forward, and I want to say that I think this work of these study committees really was good work, as you recognize the need and a reason to study and see what these impacts are from a freight and logistics point of view and from an aviation point of view, that really put us in good shape as we see the great success on the next slide, which is slide 8, of a lot of this economic development success we've seen recently. In fact, this is from the Department of Economic Development, is 358 companies announced expansion in Georgia at $21 billion in private investment last year in fiscal year 22. 17.8, let's call it 18 billion has a logistics enabled business. So almost all of it has some impact to the freight and logistics part of that. You can see the manufacturing and automotive, obviously, with Hyundai, Kia announcement, and Rivian, huge job announcements you all know about. But sort of impressive along their own is just the logistics and distribution, with 34 companies and 6,200 jobs, outside of those big auto deals. And then the agribusiness part of that, again, our number one economy at 1.4 billion and 48 companies, it's 2,600 jobs. So outside of Rivian and Hyundai Kia, that would still have been a record year for economic development, as I understand it. So you can see that success, the success that we have here in Georgia. Well, that turns into transportation nexus, right? Is that these businesses are coming here for a lot of the good reasons we have, but transportation becomes a critical player in being able for them to be successful going forward. So our planning division under Janine Miller has done a fantastic job in working on what our federal freight plan needs to be, and then what the freight plan for the state needs to be, and even a deeper dive in and around the Port of Savannah. So I want to talk about that on these next slides to, again, educate you on sort of what's to come. It's easy to talk about transportation and what we experience today, but it's very hard for people to vision cast for what's the future going to look like. And of course, we all want the future to be success. We want to continue this success of the number one state to do business for a very long time, at least on my watch from a transportation point of view. So the next slide is sort of working with the private sector. And I want to give, again, Janine and her team just props for, they work diligently with these. This is the NASCAR slide as we show it. It's all the sponsorship, it's like the side of the NASCAR. These are all the businesses that they pull together a freight advisory committee to ask these businesses what needs to be done from their business point of view for them to continue to be successful. Not us as engineers trying to figure out what kind of things we need to do. We wanted to hear from them directly, and they had several freight advisory committee meetings. Last one wrapped up just last calendar year. And the next slide, sort of, this is what they said. This is what the businesses said we need Georgia DOT and the state to do, is work on reliability. That means that they can get to where they need to be in the time frames they plan on. And how do you get at that? You have to reduce the hours of non-reoccurring traffic, right? If you know it's going to take you 45 minutes, you want it to take you 45 minutes. You can't have these wild swings. One day it's 45, the next day it's an hour and a half, the next day it's 40. So reliability is everything. And of course, that translates to speed. So speed was one of those things from door-to-door travel time. So if we can increase freight speed, and I don't mean speeding, I mean, again, speed that you can move safely, it helps back with that reliability. And of course, cost, shipping is a huge cost sector in products. And so that shipping cost, again, from speed and reliability, and if you can lessen the impact of congestion, then that helps the bottom line for sure. The risk, what they basically is, all the things above I talked about become risk factors. And so if we can provide alternate routes, alternate modes, be more on rail or more in air or more on ship, then that helps lower their risk from surface transportation. And the last one's the no-brainer. It really should be at the top of the list, is safety. Insurance, obviously, is a big cost for transportation. If we can be more safe and provide safer transportation options and improve safety in all we do, it drives down everybody's cost, because every crash, every incident truly has a cost. So on the next slide, if we translate some of this basic plan information into what the network really does, 2019 was the last good year without, wild COVID swings of data. In 2019, there was 500 million tons of freight moved on Georgia roadways. And when you see that map there on slide 11, the darker the line, the wider the line, the more tonnage was moved. That over 500 million tons equated to $700 billion of goods. So half a billion tons, but $700 billion of goods moved within Georgia. So it's really interesting to see, where this freight is moving from all sectors: manufacturing, ag, and e-commerce. But that map's a good map that shows you where the biggest tonnage is moved. On the next slide, this is what that freight data looks like if you break it down. If you look at the inbound tonnage coming into Georgia, 181 million tons. Outbound, 146 million tons. 143 million tons just move around in the state. And this is the one that always that gets me, is how much just moves through Georgia. 115 million tons, which turns out to be about 20% of the freight on Georgia's network is just passed through. And that sort of gets back to when people say, hey, you need to build a Atlanta bypass to get the freight around Atlanta. Well, no, most of the freight's coming to Atlanta, quite honestly. So, but 20% is passed through freight. So this is 2019. Our freight planning work looks out to the year 2050, which sounds like a long way away. It's really not when it comes to transportation. Look at these numbers. Look at the tons of growth from 2019 to 2050 in that second column. And then the last column is the compound annual growth rate. So inbound traffic is going to grow by 76%. Outbound traffic grows by 86%. Within Georgia grows by 117%. Think about these recent job announcements of the automotive manufacturers where there's going to be tier one suppliers and subs to them that make parts, and they're going to be moving more tonnage in Georgia before that vehicle becomes an outbound product out of the state or sometimes in the state. And even the percent growth and through traffic grows by 93%. So when you look at that tonnage, you go from the previous slide of a little over 500,000 tons, 585 million tons, to 1.12 billion tons moved in Georgia. And that is, I mean, that's just staggering when you look at that increase, 92% increase, almost double of what you're going to see on tonnage by the year 2050. And the annual growth rates over there, compound annual growth rate at basically 2% and above, that's a pretty steady increase. That is, you know, if you're looking at when do we invest and how do we get there, obviously 2% per annum is a decent growth rate. So where's all this going to happen at? On the next slide, you'll see a map of the state that shows the manufacturing impacts. And I'm going to tell you that when this chart was done, Hyundai, Kia, and Rivian was not known at that time, so it's not represented here. This is a great chart, again, from economic development. The darker the color, the more tons of products are manufactured in Georgia. So you can see the darker ones in the chart over at the right, and Vice Chair Dixon, right there is Gwinnett County. Part of your district leading with top 10. The kilotons is 1,000 tons. So you can just see Gwinnett, Fulton, Hall, Chatham, Cobb with manufacturing growing, and of course, percentage-wise, you'll see Bryan County, Newton, Walton with Rivian and all that when they come online. But the manufacturing is expected to grow by 77%. As based on the projected gross state product. So that has a tremendous growth. The next slide is the same type of chart showing the state, but this time with agribusiness, which shows, again, Jackson County growing. It's over near Center again over there. It's really growing. Carroll, Colquitt, Franklin County, my home county there, and Hall County, obviously with poultry industry. You can see that 43% growth in agribusiness by the gross state product by 2050, and you can see those counties. Especially, it's sort of interesting to look in the southwest part of the state where we already have agribusiness, but you can see tremendous growth again. And I always like to correlate that back to population growth, right? We've got to feed the people that are here. The growing economy and all these are people coming to jobs, we got to feed them, and then obviously export as well, which we do a lot of. So let me quick go to the next slide. I've referenced the Hyundai Kia meta plan, as they call it, several times. Planning has worked and it hasn't completed, and I might add that it hadn't completed this. The information I'm giving you is a little bit our early preview. They hadn't completed the freight study, and they hadn't quite completed this 4-county study around the coast, being Bryan, Bullitt, Chatham, and Effingham. But I thought it was important to give you a preview of some of the things we're seeing there. We know that the Savannah Port has a 20% increase back in 2021, another 60% increase by the year 2025, in capacity. And they're building and expanding now, as you know. What's very interesting is that we found that 75% of the trips out of the port are destined for those 4-county areas. So you get a container, it comes into that four-county area, it gets broken down, repackaged, and then goes to another destination. So that four-county area is really something. And this is what really got me, and I put a circle around it, because there's about 100 million square feet of warehouse distribution now. It's expected to double in 10 years. As fast as we can go building projects, major projects, it's a 7 to 10 year journey. And so if we start today, we're not going to keep up with this potential freight expansion in and around there. So it's just amazing to see a lot of good data in this. We'll share more with you as this work completes. But just to see that within 10 years, doubling, if you go to Savannah and ride around, or even better, if you fly into Savannah and can see those rooftops of million square foot warehouses, and they're going to double, that is something.
You mind if I ask a question on this? Commissioner?
Tell me your mic number again, Mr. Chairman.
11. Commissioner, this is amazing to go from 100 to 200 million square feet in 10 years. If we had the money right now to give to you, could you implement projects to start addressing this circle on this slide?
I think it's going to be incumbent that we get underway as quickly as possible, yes. I mean, but it takes time to develop that. You know, even talking to you about the 2050 horizon sounds like a long time away, but it takes time to get those going. From 2015 to today, as you referenced the State Route 20 project with state funds, it's still taking a while to buy all that property and getting it going. So yes, we really need to get going today if funding was available.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So with that being said, let's still take a look at what's going on with just a few of those expansions. On the next slide is the Georgia automotive manufacturing industries with 50 employees, 50 plus employees. This is before Hyundai, Rivian sites. Just look at all the dots, and then you can see in the surrounding states. When the governor says Georgia's going to be the #1 state for e-mobility, with Hyundai, Kia, and Rivian, you can already see all the jobs and businesses with 50 or more employees in Georgia already. And so we really are going to become that automaker of prominence in the state. So I just thought that was a nice slide to show. As great as all those things are going on with manufacturing and ag, the next slide is this bubble chart that I always like to use. It shows the compound annual growth rate by industry on the y-axis up and down, and to the right is the intensity of how many car or trucks and rail may be used. And e-commerce outpaces both the growth rate of agribusiness and manufacturing. And we've seen that, we've experienced it through COVID. Does it normalize a little bit? Yes, but it's not going away. In fact, percentages-wise, compound annual growth rate is still outpacing these others. So we're still ordering stuff online. I do a lot of presentations. I usually ask people who's ordering something online while I'm talking, see if anybody will confess. But you know, it's amazing that this e-commerce is still going to be strong and a strong driver in our economy. But all that e-commerce goes to a warehouse distribution center, and some of you have pressures, right? Those are showing up in your residential areas, and I have one directly across the street from where I live. I can see it out of my bedroom window. And I told my wife, I said, they found where we live. They know where we live. So we get those deliveries on a daily basis. This next slide is warehouse distribution by tonnage and then value. And so you can see in 2019, about 54 million tons of warehouse tons moved through warehouse distribution. And you can see the percentage that's on truck and rail. You can see that by 2050, it grows by 87, or it goes to 203 tons, and a little bit more on truck and a little less on rail. Again, that's part of the growing part of these warehouse distribution centers. Not that rail wouldn't want to move it, it's just a matter of that as we continue to build out, there's more on truck. The value, though, look at this value, $176 million, billion of value in 2019 to go into 623 by 2050. So huge values moved through these warehouse distribution centers. So just again, another factoid there. Next slide, again, it's not all on road or rail. Air cargo continues to grow. The top generators there are pharmaceuticals. Number 2 is motor vehicle parts, which I believe will continue to grow with the auto manufacturers coming to Georgia. Electronics, machinery, and obviously textiles, which we have in the northwest part of the state, very critical to our economy. $3 billion in domestic commodities are transported annually to and from Georgia, and $27 billion in international commodities arrive and depart. So a huge impact. We've got an air cargo demand study our aviation team has done that shows the criticality of these airports. And if you look at the little dots, you can sort of see the icons there match up to what's being moved. But you also can see those fulfillment distribution centers, 132 locations there that use an airport. So again, a lot of things move on surface transportation, be it rail or roadways, but things move through the air as well. Now, all that being said, I want to go back and show the investments that we've currently are making around the state on these next slides. If you flip over to the one that says Major Mobility Investment Program, this has been a major initiative we've had for a long time, taking on congested or freight bottlenecks of interchanges, and I'll walk through those. You referenced the express lanes that we're working on State Route 400, but we plan those on 285 as well. Again, 285 has some of the highest traffic volumes in the nation and the highest truck percentages in the nation. So we want to work on express lanes to, again, when we move cars into express lanes, the general purpose lanes get better. Obviously, 400's under procurement now. Major interstate widenings, we've had 2 projects under this program, widen I-85, and we've got a 3rd project underway. It goes all the way up to US 441 in Commerce. That's where SK Battery is. Again, for freight movement, making those investments. We have a commercial vehicle lane that's from Macon northbound up into the south part of Henry County that will separate the tractor trailers from the cars, 2 dedicated lanes for tractor trailers. That project actually doesn't go to procurement until 2025. It's still a little ways out. And we're making improvements all around 285. So let me just take a deeper dive into some things around the coast. If you flip over to the next slide, this is a placemat, I call it, of the $600 million of investment that's been made in and around the port to get that, what we call last mile connectivity in and out of the port. I know it's a little bit small, but there's recent completion of Jimmy DeLoach Parkway that connects to I-16 that takes you right into the gate. The 16 I-95 interchange, I'll show you on the next slide. The project's just getting underway. It's down in the bottom right corner called the Brampton Road Connector that really connects over from 21 into the port, another direct access that goes over a railroad track so that freight's not being impeded by the trains that are trying to get in and out to move freight as well. So grade separate that. There's a $126 million project that's, I don't even think it's a mile long, super complicated. And again, that's our partnership to help move freight in and around the Port of Savannah. On the next slide is a great aerial photo of I-16, I-95. And you can see this is this project will be complete, targeted at the end of this calendar year, $370 million design build project. Again, to reconfigure the I-16, I-95 interchange to get your bearings. North South Carolina is to the top of the page and Savannah is to the right. But you get rid of those little loop ramps and we put these what's called a turbine interchange in so that you basically don't have to slow down much and freight flows a lot smoother. And we also separate the I-95 northbound exit to I-16 to improve safety. So big project going on there. A lot of work for sure still to go on. Next, again, near Savannah, the US 17 Savannah River Crossing. You might have seen this in the paper just a week or so ago, a couple weeks ago. The Savannah Bridge there, the cable stay bridge in Savannah, was built and opened in 1991, I believe it was, or 2. I know I worked on it. I didn't work on it. I was down to be able to see it when I was very new in my career at GDOT. The cables need to be maintained and replaced. And while we do that, we're going to work with specialty engineers to see if we can raise the deck elevation so that there's a higher air draft that ships can get under a little more easily. So this isn't the ultimate solution, but this, according to Georgia Ports Authority, if we can gain some elevation from the water surface there, that is good for them, that they can now get more 14,000 TEU ships, maybe some 16,000 TEU ships underway. These two bridges here that I'll just show you where this has been done across the world. Obviously, Malaysia is not near here, but the Luling Bridge, Senator Beach may know about, it's across the Mississippi River outside of New Orleans. It was built about the same time frame, and back in 2009, they replaced those cables. And when they replaced the cables, they're doing it with traffic running on the bridge. And so our mission, using something called construction manager, general contractor, where we will hire a specialty cable designer. Separately, we'll hire a specialty cable constructor. We put them together on the team and have them develop the plans and learn from each other. And then the contractor can give us a price to do the work. If we accept the price to do the work, we proceed. If not, we take the plans and we bid it out. But this is really specialty type work. There's not many of these type of constructors in the world, much less in the nation. So we'll start this procurement now. It'll be through the end of this calendar year before we even just get underway. But again, we believe this is a good solution to get things going for river traffic. And obviously taking care of the maintenance we need to do for the bridge itself. The next slide again is the investment for Hyundai Kia Meta plant down in Bryan County. You can see that we will be up, and I have to give you some orientation. Savannah is to the right on this. We will be building a 4-lane frontage road. We'll be upgrading the existing US 280, which is the yellow section there. We'll be adding roundabouts along 280 plus widening it to 4 lanes. And we'll be building a new interchange on the right side of that as well to connect the frontage road. This is very similar to what Kia looks like. If you go over to West Point, it looks like almost the exact same configuration. We will put out our first design build project for the frontage road this June, followed by the widening of 280 in September, and the interchange next July 2024. If you flip the next page, the East Atlanta megasite, very similar layout, just flip it upside down, same thing, building a frontage road, widening US 278, and building a new interchange. We're already under contract for the frontage road and the widening of 280, and then next summer, in October, we'll put the interchange out for bid. So those projects are moving along as part of the East Atlanta megasite. A couple other big freight corridors, I-285 and I-20 East interchange is already under contract, a $788 million design build finance. Again, we hire a contractor and a designer to do the design build part, and they finance it for short term for 3 to 5 years. We pay them back after the project is completed over a 3 to 5 year period. We will see construction start this calendar year and open to traffic in 2025. Multiple improvements along 285, and obviously a lot of I-20 work out to Lithonia Industrial Boulevard. On I-285 and I-20 on the west side of town, we just started procurement in December. And so this is another big system-to-system interchange. It's the 5th worst freight bottleneck in the nation. Again, going back to that reliability and speed that I talked about that we heard from the private sector, these two interchanges both improve that. It's about $1 billion project. And so again, design, build, finance. So we will hire a contractor to design it and build it and finance a portion of it, and we pay them back once it's open to traffic. So procurement's underway. We'll get bids in the second quarter of next year. It is quite a process to go through that process of hiring and determining the best value selection of that. And finally, I just end with this one on projects updates. I-16, I-75, you can't go to Savannah or anywhere through the middle part of the state without going through I-16, 75. $600 million investment. Phases 1 through 5 are underway. Some of those will finish up next year, and there is still one more piece that we'll have to bid in sometime to go to construction in 2025, and that's the purple piece to the very top left. Very complicated piece there with railroad, river, and close proximity to business and the like. So bear with us. It continues to get better. We're making incremental openings along that corridor. As you've been through there lately, I-75, stay to the left side, not like you used to go to Savannah. If you're like me, sometimes you may have missed that, even I'll make that mistake. But the I-75 piece has gotten a lot better, and there's pieces that are getting better as we open different sections, even though the full thing won't be completed for several more years. But that people always ask me about. Mr. Chairman, I've given you a long report. Last thing I'll just show you is this January 12th storm response. The very best of GDOT is our people in all these divisions and offices, and then the dedication and commitment of our maintenance folks that are still doing storm cleanup back from January 12th. Over 3,000 dump truck loads. You can see the dump trucks there we've hauled off so far. It's been our honor and privilege to help the cities and the counties as well. Since it's now a federal declaration, they've got their own contractors. We're back working on our roads, and hopefully we'll finish getting this cleaned up and get back to our real work. But this is a time to help Georgians. We're certainly always glad to do that. And I end on this same slide I've used several times. The future is not something we enter. The future is something we create together. And I look forward to working with this Senate Transportation Committee to creating the future that you all want to have going forward. And we're at the Department of Transportation glad to help do that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the detailed explanation. I think I've seen some of these slides before, but I learn something new every time. It really is quite impressive, both the opportunity and the challenges that lay before us. Members of the committee, we have 6 minutes. If you have any questions, we'd love to give the opportunity to ask those, and we'll do it in rapid-fire style as much as possible. Senator Moore.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, you talked about the US 17 bridge, replacing the cables. Do you have any rough estimates on what it would cost? I know we're looking like $1 billion for the interchange at I-20 and 285. Wouldn't it be something about $1 billion too, I guess, to build a tunnel underneath that river to where we could go to 20,000 or whatever the future holds for bringing container ships in?
Yeah, those cost estimates would be in the billions versus the cables, which right now is probably all total under 200 million. I think we're budgeted about 150 to 175 for that.
And that's only going to max us out to 18,000 TCUs?
No, it'd get you 14,000, pretty comfortable. 16,000 still would have tidal and loading issues, as I understand it from the Ports Authority.
Okay, but
it's not the ultimate solution, but again, we had to do cable maintenance, and so while you're doing cable maintenance, you might as well get something. And so, you know, if you're doing an ultimate solution as well, you gotta get started to get there, and it'll take a long journey to get there too. But at least we're doing something now, which the Port Authority is desperately saying they need now. So hopefully that's a good outcome.
As I understand from you, Mr. Commissioner, you would estimate a minimum 10-year build, design, execution on a tunnel, and this
Correct.
is viewed as a stopgap measure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Senator Burns.
Quick follow-up, back to the 17 river crossing, you're gonna raise the decking by estimated amount of feet?
Yes, sir. That's why we believe we can get lift out of it. The exact amount is undetermined at this amount, but anything we can get for GPA, they are welcoming.
I know, second question, follow-up, Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I-20 west of Augusta, access to Fort Gordon, Gate 6.
So we are doing we're underway with what we call scoping, which is the engineering of routes, looking for environmental, sort of the fatal flaws environmentally and right-of-way. We're undoing that now, which will ultimately determine how we probably put that big project in pieces, like the interchange, and then probably 2 or 3 pieces that get you all the way to Fort Gordon. So that work will take through this year into next, and then from there we really have good costing information, environmental work and design work that basically says this is now how we start working on that interchange.
24, 25, 26.
I would say we would know how to start the pure engineering moving forward in 2024.
Thank you, Senator Burns. Any other questions from the committee? Senator Beach.
On this slide here, Commissioner, about the rail, these distribution centers that are being built, do they just not have rail, a rail spur to them? And is that something we could work with the railroads to make sure they were investing in that so we could get rail more, get some of these trucks off
yeah.
the road?
Yes,
in
sir, I think
2015?
that's certainly wise, especially as you saw 75% of that coming out of the gates are landing in 4 counties, you know. So that's big. And again, I think part of that diminished rail share on that is stuff just moving around in the state where it doesn't make a lot of sense to short rail it. I mean,
Right.
you know, you need the distance for that to be efficient
And time.
in time, right?
Okay. One last question. I'm glad to see that we're focusing on air cargo. I think we do a good job on all other parts of cargo, and obviously we got the busiest airport in the world, but I don't think they're the top 10 in air cargo. I do think there's a great opportunity in Savannah with all the growth down there to really grow air cargo at that Savannah airport. So I would encourage us to continue to look at our local airports and see what we can do to grow air cargo.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Final question will go to Chairman Ginn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, let's get to the nuts and bolts. If you were gonna fund the improvements for freight and logistics, what source would you look for the most?
Well, I'm a practitioner, Senator. I don't know I don't know that I can opine on that. I'll work with the resources provided.
Good dodgeball.
You should be a politician, Mr. Commissioner. Appreciate all the information you gave us today. And for those participating in the subcommittee chairmanship on appropriations for transportation, meets at Wednesday at 3 p.m. If you're not on that, you're welcome to join us. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.